Good evening, good morning, good night, whatever the case may be. It's your favorite history teacher that knows the most. It's me, Coach Hughes. And coming to you today from just a bit of a different location than I've been broadcasting from in the past. This is home to me. This is sitting here behind my desk in my Alabama classroom. Roll Tide to all you Auburn fans out there. Had to get the dig in to you. But we are currently fixing to start this brand new chapter. And really, in world history, there's about three topics, maybe four, that really interest me. And we have covered one already. We've talked about the ancient Egyptians from chapter 4. We're going to get into, right now, we're going to get into the ancient Greeks. And the next chapter we'll talk about is the Romans. And probably my fourth favorite is probably the Middle Ages. Those are probably my four favorite topics when it comes to really the ancient world. So sit back, relax, listen to my sound of my voice as it soothes you. Hopefully, not to sleep, but maybe you'll learn, something or not. Maybe not. Who knows? All right, move my box around here. All right, so we have been talking in depth about Egypt, the Middle East, and all this. And for the first time this year, we're kind of moving a little bit further to the east. And where we're going to stop at today is the Greek Peninsula, a lovely place to visit, I would say. But we're kind of finally moving out of the Middle East and northeastern Africa, the continent there, and we're kind of getting away from that area just a little bit because history does take place really all over the world. Anytime we start a new subject, anytime we start a new chapter, we're going to be talking a little bit about the geography of that area. And it holds true today. So, if you look on your screen there, that is the Greek Peninsula. It's where the Greeks lived. Okay. So the Greeks lived on this rocky, mountainous land. And it's located on a peninsula, like I said, and it's surrounded by the Mediterranean, the Ionian, and the Aegean Seas. Now, every time we've talked really about a new place in ancient history so far, we've talked about the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia. We've talked about the fertile lands of the Nile in Egypt. And really, when you get to Greece, it's kind of like, yeah, really? It's rocky, it's mountainous. It's not a lot of good farmland, not a lot of good fertile soil there. So why? Oh, why would a group of people settle in this type of area? Well, let's talk about that. Circle B if you're keeping score at home, because this is going to be on the quiz. This is going to be on the test. A peninsula has an irregular shape. When I think of a peninsula, I think of Florida, and probably you think of Florida since you are probably an American listening to this. Now, around this peninsula, though, there are many islands floating off the mainland there. Literally, the Greek mainland, off of the Greek mainland, has literally thousands of these small little islands. The only problem is a lot of these islands are uninhabitable. A lot of volcanic activity or just mountainous, treacherous. You can't live there. This area was home of literally one of the world's greatest civilization. And you got to be thinking to yourself right now, you just said that this is a rocky, mountainous peninsula. It's not like the Fertile Crescent. It's not like the Nile River Valley. So the question begs that you need to know why. Why is this considered one of the world's greatest civilizations? Let's dive into that question, shall we? All right. So here we go. Now, if you look at the picture right here beside my picture, That's kind of your typical area for ancient Greece. You've got a big mountain, you've got hilly, rocky soil, and they're kind of in the middle right there. There's a little spot of almost flat greenland. That would be your farmland. There's not a lot of places to farm. The few small valleys, like you see in this picture, and plains of Greece did provide farmland. They did farm. And that is where the people had to settle. They had to settle around these farms. And these communities were separated by steep mountains, as you see in the background of this picture. So there was little contact between the villages. And this kind of set up a little bit of isolationism to where the people didn't really have contact with other Greek villages. So the villages created separate governments. And when you look at this picture, this is your ideal, typical Greek community to some degree. You have this big, steep mountain. You have the farmland kind of there in the middle, and you have this steep, rocky soil um, everywhere else. Not really good for farming. Now, the ancient Greeks, if you couldn't farm, or if your farmland was limited or really stinky, you couldn't do a lot with it. You had to figure out how do you get your food and how do you survive. Okay. Circle D. Ancient Greeks, they were fishers, they were sailors, they were traders, and they were still farmers on the little bit of farmland they had. But remember what we said from slide 1. Greece is a peninsula. It is surrounded by water. And you know what's in the water? Fish. That's what's in the water. So if you want to keep your bellies all full and you don't want to starve, if you don't want to be hungry, you got to use your geographical surroundings to your advantage. And that's what the Greeks did. They became experts at fishing. Now, it probably started off on the shore. If you ever been on vacation at the beach, you've probably seen people kind of fishing there on the beach. But if you want to keep your family fed, if you want to keep your people fed, you got to expand. And that's what they did. When it says sailors, they had to become shipbuilders. And that's letter E. Because they were surrounded by the water, the Greeks became skilled shipbuilders and sailors. Okay. They used their geographical features that they had around them, that being water, surrounded on 3 sides, a peninsula, and they built ships. And over time, they're going to learn how to build ships that are really good. Maybe small, faster ships, maybe ships that are conducive to hauling large loads of fish. Okay. So it takes time, trial and error, but over time, they're going to become these great shipbuilders. Well, if you build ships over time, you kind of learn how to take care of your geographical surroundings, the features that are around you, and wind. They became expert sailors because you didn't have motors, you didn't have gasoline, so you couldn't have motor powered boats, but you could use the wind power. And as you see in the picture here, they became experts at sailing. They used the wind to propel their vessels or their boats in this case. Now, the Greeks were exposed to other cultures because they built the boats, because they became sailors, and because they learned to go. It wasn't just a foot race anymore. They learned to sail, they became experts, and they really sailed all over the waters there of the Aegean and the Ionian and the Mediterranean seas. And because they built these ships and because they went out, they traded with other cultures. They learned how to talk with other cultures. They learned the game of trade, what they could and could not trade. They became literal experts, okay? Because it goes back to this fundamental thought here. They had to use their geographical features, okay? And that's one way that they became such a great culture. All right. So, one of the many cultures that settled and grew up in early Greece, and probably the earliest and most influential, were two groups of people. You got to know both of these for the quiz and test: the Minoans and the mighty Mycenaeans. By 2000 BC, the Minoans had built an advanced society on the island, very large island of Crete. If you look at the picture over here, Crete down at the bottom there, an island, simply what it sounds like, a landmass surrounded by water on all sides. This was where the Minoans developed. Now, the Mycenaeans, they built their ancient civilization on the mainland. That would be that Greek peninsula where they're surrounded by water on three sides. Now, Circle B. The Minoans were known for being the best shipbuilders of their time. Well, think about that. They're on an island. If you're on an island, the only way you're leaving the island is building a ship. The only way that you're leaving this island is if you know how to navigate that ship. Hence, they became really good at building ships. And the reason, again, their geographical features, they're on an island. If they wanted to explore, if they wanted to trade, if they wanted to survive by fishing, because their geographical landmass, rocky, mountainous, they're going to have to know how to build these boats and to fish. Okay? That's the Minoans on the island of Crete, down there at the bottom of your picture. All right? So, the Minoans, they use ships mainly for trading purposes, fishing as well, and, well, their civilization doesn't last long because they're on a volcanic island. A volcano that erupted in the 1600s may have led to the end of the Minoan civilization. Let me correct something. It may not have necessarily been a volcano on the island of Crete. It could have been on one of these other many islands, but that volcanic eruption, whether it was on Crete or maybe a neighboring island, led to basically the end of the Minoan civilization. That is a quiz question. That is a test question. Now, let's go back up to the Greek mainland for a second. The mighty Mycenaeans. Well, they spoke the language that will eventually become known as the Greek language. So you can give them a star for starting that. And while the Minoans were sailing, the Mycenaeans were building fortresses on the Greek mainland. If you look at the picture here, think of a bunker, storm shelter, maybe, if you would. What they would do is a lot of people built walls around their cities, and the Greeks did too. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But they had a lot of geographical features that they could use to kind of curb and not having to build four walls around their city states. So what you would have most of the time, starting with the Mycenaeans, is that they would find a big steep mountain and they would start their city state building their city up against this mountain. And that way they would only have to build the outer walls for protection because really you're not going to have any ancient civilization that climb way up yonder and parachute in. It's just not going to happen. Okay. So they have a safety mechanism in these steep mountains, hence their geographical features that were really important to them. Now, the Mycenaeans eventually too took over trade routes after the Minoans kind of died out because of their volcanic eruption and their dying of their civilization. The Mycenaeans set up a powerful trading network all over the Mediterranean and Black Seas, and they set up these connections with these other people and cultures to really start bringing in these different ideas and even money. But hence too, the Mycenaeans culture didn't last long either. They also fell victim to natural disasters. In this case, probably what happened. This area is conducive to volcanic activity, but also earthquakes. So what we think happened is the Mycenaean culture probably fell prey to these earthquakes that weakened their cities and people, and eventually invaders kind of came in and took over all of this area, and it kind of led to a dark period in Greek culture. So that's what kind of happened to the Minoans. Minoans volcanic eruption, and the Mycenaeans, probably an earthquake leading to invaders. So Greece goes through this dark age. After about 300 years of war and disorder and just utter chaos, communities started to band together for stability and protection. They realized, hey, we are safer in groups than we are separate. If we're separated, other people from outside of our area just kind of come in and pick us off one by one. But if we kind of ally ourselves together, if we loose alliance ourselves together, if we join together in groups, we have a better chance of safety and protection and longevity. Circle B. So they created a polis, or as we've learned in earlier chapters, a city state. And a city state is just a kind of a small city that acts big and bad like they're this big country like the United States or Canada or Mexico or Germany or Great Britain. And this marked the beginning of the Greek classical age, a time filled with great achievement throughout the Greek peninsula and the surrounding islands. Now, a city-state often was built around a fortress perched atop a hill, and this is called an acropolis. Circle C. You need to know this for the quiz and test. This was the main gathering place of a city-state, walls that surrounded many of these cities. Circle D. Much of the daily life circled around the agora, which is the marketplace where religion, politics, and shopping all shared the stage. Now, if you think of this in terms of 2020, this would kind of be like Walmart. Even when I was small, we would go there to buy groceries or clothes, or, it's a super center. So even motor oil if you need it, or get your car tuned up. But, my mom, she would go in and out of Walmart. And know what I want? Know what I need? I'm in and out. But if you go with my dad, oh my gosh, he knows everybody. He could stop there. He could gossip. They could talk about politics. They could do the shopping. You could talk about religion in Walmart. Walmart to me is your modern day 2020 or beyond agora type place. It's the marketplace. As the stability returned, some of the Greek city-states formed colonies in foreign lands because they're still going out on their ships. Expert shipbuilders, expert at sailings. So when they would go out, sometimes they would colonize these foreign lands and make them colonies, Greek colonies, foreign lands, but under Greek control. Early colonies included modern-day Turkey, France, and Italy, which will become a major player when we get to talking in later chapters about the Roman Republic and Empire. This created a further and further independence for these city-states, and some city-states became actually great trading centers that if everybody's coming to you to trade something, you're going to get money. It's going to be taxed. And then you have the explosion of these other city-states that have been colonized. Okay? All right. So possible essay questions for this chapter we'll kind of look at here. Briefly explain how the geography of Greece helped shape early Greek civilization. I believe we talked a little bit about that today. And probably in section 2, you guys are going to learn about the possible essay question number 2. Describe the difference between direct and representative democracy and why a direct democracy probably would not work here in the United States today. Because remember, the United States is not a democracy per se. It's a constitutional republic. Did you know that? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for Coach Hughes today. So tune in next time and we will talk about a direct and representative democracy, and where it all started in ancient Greece. Good evening, good night, and God bless to all of you. Until next time.